Begin. Good evening. Good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Laguna Madre Water District Notice of a Workshop meeting, July 26, 2017. Notice is hereby given of a workshop of the Board of Directors of the District to be held at 105 Fort Road, Port Isabel, Texas, on the 26th day of July 2017 at the hour of 4:30 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on July 21st, 2017, 9:30 a.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551-041, 551-050, and a copy furnished to the county clerk in Cameron County, Texas. We do have the presence of a quorum. We have Board Member D. Wells, Scott Friedman, and Mr. Keplinger here today. Absent, we have R. Wells and Mr. Thomas. If I may please have everyone stand for the invocation of Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, please bless us this day and let's have good meeting and help us to convey the information on the matters to the board. Please thank you, Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, consider and discuss the engineer's report for proposed November 2017 bond election.
Well, actually, the engineer's on his way. All of them going to be started up. We want to jump to the next item.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's move on to item number 4, consider and discuss the proposition for system improvements, purchase of additional surface water rights in the water reclamation facility.
All right. This is just the draft format of the proposition. I don't know, maybe y'all can talk about who set it up.
Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Noel Valdez. I'm with the law firm of McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. I'm out of the San Antonio office, and we have the honor and privilege to have served as your bond counsel and obviously to advise you on...
Can you kind of adjust their feedback?
Yeah, there's...
Can you kind of adjust that? Echo. Echo, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it, Scott. I can... Okay. We served as your bond counsel for an unsuccessful bond election in 2010, and then for the successful bond election in 2011. Generally speaking, I'll be very broad. Obviously, this is if the board would desire to go and hold a bond election in November, this would be your avenue for which you would ask the voters of the district for the authority to issue bonds supported by an ad valorem tax. Like I said, you all did this in 2010, then successfully in 2011. There were 2 propositions that were voted in 2011. One was a general proposition, what I call a general proposition, just general improvements to your system. And the second proposition was the desalinization plant, which that authority has not been used. That is still voted, but the unused authority that the district has. Just to give you a little bit of history, probably history that you already know, in 2010 we had a single proposition that the district went with. That was, it's very broad, it is allowed by the statute, basically allows you to do any project within the district related to your system. State law, as opposed to a city or school district, does make you, or before you call a bond election, you have to approve an engineer's report, and you have to include a budget in the election order itself. So you're a little bit different from a city or a school district in that you have to, you can vote a general proposition, but you have to be a little bit more specific in your budget in telling the voters of the district exactly what it is that they're voting for. In 2010, there was a general one proposition where the desalinization plant was actually line item in that one general proposition. That was unsuccessful. We came back in 2011. The thought was perhaps we want to separate the desalinization from the other general projects. That was done, and then both propositions passed, both the general proposition and the desalinization proposition. So as we look at this bond election, I did have a conversation. I did come meet with staff. We went over some of these issues with regard to having one proposition, 2 propositions. What do you do with the outstanding voted authority that you have not issued under? And those are some of the questions I'll be happy to field for you all. As you listen through the projects, decide what projects maybe to put a bond election, whether to decide to call a bond election at all. I mean, that is obviously your decision. If you are going to call a bond election, you must call it by August 21st. The only precondition to calling a bond election, besides you all deciding if you want to call one and for what projects and for what amount, is that once you all decide those issues, is approving engineering reports. And those engineering reports, by state law, will be here for inspection by the public, for those who might want to know exactly, to the detail, what it is that they'll be voting for. Should you all decide before August 21st that you want to move with the bond election, we will draft all the necessary documents like we did back in 2011.
What was
Yes.
the date again, you said?
August 21st. Yes, sir. So we will draft
3 weeks.
We'll draft the election order. We will work with staff to make sure that, obviously, you'll see the propositions before they're approved. We'll work to get the ballots to the county. We will prepare a election letter that we'll send to staff that'll get publication, posting notices. In the end, we have a very vested interest in that the district holds their election in accordance with state law, because should the election pass and you issue bonds, the Attorney General will be asking for a complete transcript of the election proceedings to make sure that indeed that election was held in accordance with state law. Their opinion approving any bonds will state that the bonds were issued in accordance with state law, and that means in accordance with your election proceedings. So we're very much, should you decide to move on, a very hands-on firm will be, as we were back in 2011, with you all along the way. There'll be questions that'll come up, and they did last election. What can we say, what can we not say for or against the election? Those are issues that we can obviously discuss at a later time. But right now, really what the direction I'd be looking for, we do have till August 21st, is what are the projects, if any, that want to be put on the ballot. Do y'all desire, like you did in 2011, to have separate ballots or have one ballot like we did in 2010? And also, there's this unused authority that the district has. There's a couple of things that you can do with that unused authority. One is do nothing, and it stays out there, and that is an avenue that the district could pursue further down in the future, or not pursue. I mean, but that would be at the will of the board. There has been this idea, can we close that authority? Can we do away with that authority? There probably, and I say probably because ultimately the direction you give me, I want to make sure that we pass by the Attorney General so that I give you an answer directly from Austin. But I have not called Austin. They're friends of mine, but I have not called Austin because I want you all to give me direction if there's direction to be given on that particular topic. But the two ways that I see that you could close that authority would be immediately after calling a bond election, approve a resolution of the board stating that should that November election pass, that the district would obligate itself not to issue debt under the desalinization project. Another way could be perhaps to intertwine it. There's broad authority for the way you draft your bond propositions to intertwine it in the proposition itself, so that when folks vote, they also, for a particular project, they're also voting to do away with the prior authority. So there's various...
It doesn't have to be two separate...
Doesn't have to be two separate.
Two separate voting boxes, I'll call it.
Exactly. And that I give to you probably as a 95% answer, because I've seen it before and I've talked to partners who have done it with some utility districts. I would want to pass that proposition by the Attorney General just to get there okay before we submit it to the voters, but we're fairly confident that that's an avenue that the district could go, is in one proposition.
So it'd be a question of do it that way or just do it straight open and transparent and have one voting box for repealing.
Does that cumber one over the other? I mean, does that make someone say, if someone doesn't want to vote in favor of anything, I guess, does that affect their decisions of voting for one or the other, repealing, or, I mean, two separate issues and two separate issues, for or against, I guess. Am I making sense?
Yes. The only way I've thought about it, I'll be honest, Screamer, is the only way I thought about it up to this point are three different ways. Is one, let the authority stand by taking no action. Two, approve a resolution immediately after calling the bond election, stating that that should that election pass, the November election, that the district would obligate itself not to issue under the authority given to it in 2011, or intertwine it with the proposition of approving a project. I have not, and I'll be honest.
One kind of influences the other is kind of what I would think. You're saying that if you pass this one, then the other one's gonna go away, but I don't know, I'm just kind of...
Yeah, no, and
Does that make sense?
Yeah, some people might not be in favor of the proposition we want to pass, because some people might say, well, I still would like them to do a decel. So that's conflicting then.
It's like one
Yeah.
kind of forces the other one to happen, and I don't know.
I'm looking for more transparency, because if we do nothing and just don't encumber, just let it float and do nothing, people are still gonna remember that, well, we did that bond, and that's still out there.
I like his second option, personally, as one director. I like his second option, if we decide to call for a bond election, the next meeting following, just say, hey, do a resolution voiding the other one, or saying that we're not gonna fulfill Proposition 2 from 2011.
Would you put it as a proviso, should the November
should it
17th
pass?
election pass?
It's just a matter of wording it, but I think
Yeah.
we're both saying transparency, we're all saying transparency.
That's right. And, this is all, it's for me to put up your option. Obviously, it's the will of the board, and we'll, whatever it is that you all decide, whether you want to do nothing and leave that authority outstanding, it still obviously has to be approved by you all before you all or future board for you all to issue bonds under that proposition. Do you want to leave it outstanding? Do you want to create a contract with the voters by way of resolution? Or do you want me to find a way, and I think that I can, is talk to the Attorney General in intertwining it in a proposition, which, of course, it's intertwining a proposition. You're right. I mean, it does bring various issues to mind, and it, could theoretically be confusing to a voter. I mean, but it all depends on how it's written, and I'd want to bring that proposition to you all if y'all wanted to see what it would look like, and I'd be happy to do that.
Couple of questions.
Sure.
Quick questions. One is, back to the desal bond that was passed, is there a sunset on that?
There isn't.
So it just stays there forever?
It just stays there.
There's a time expiration, though, I mean...
That's why I'm asking us.
And that's
I thought it was the
that's
time expiration.
there's no time expiration according to state statute that would dictate it, where there's a hard drop-off, where there's a hard...
Do you have a question?
No, it was pointing bothering me.
So where there's a hard drop-off, it's not dictated by state statute. There is a statute that could be interpreted to mean that it's evergreen, so that it stays outstanding. Whatever be the case, I've always taken and advised my clients this, that should, let's say you want to issue this year, obviously it's still good. 2 or 3 years from now, it would still be. If we get any further down the road, because the Attorney General has to approve all the debt that is issued by the district, as well as any political subdivision in the state of Texas, prudence would dictate that we take the proposition to the board. But there's no statute of limitations or something of that sort.
We've discussed before, if this would take and affect our credit worthiness, even though it has been issued, it's still hanging out there as potential burden on the district. And so I think right now we need to back this up and look at, if we're going to go with a bond election, then handle the wording as appropriate if we're going to do the bond election. And I have one final question for myself, and that is, what staff specifically have you discussed this with?
Oh, I've met with Charles, general manager, Ms. Garcia, and so that was it was an hour meeting that I came in.
And that was to discuss the projects or the bond projects that were being considered, and we've had a little bit of conversation about that, but I don't think we've come near any agreement on what we're going to be.
I think they talk more about timelines and legal requirements, didn't y'all? Not really project so much.
Exactly, and in fact,
Okay.
I believe the engineers were there, but they had very little
Okay.
input. We talked basically what was historically what's been done with one proposition and two propositions, when was the deadline to call this election, and what do we do about the unused authority.
And as far as project selection, that would be more appropriate in the engineer's office. That would that part.
But definitely what I wanted to leave the board with is, you all definitely have flexibility. Obviously, one, you decide whether you're going to have the bond election or not. The propositions, how it is that you want us, do you want one or do you want two? And then there's obviously options that I can give you with regard to the outstanding authority. You asked a great question, Mr. Wells. What does this do for our credit rating if we have outstanding authority that we have not issued? I would defer, obviously, to your financial advisor, who's better apt at knowing exactly what, or has a better understanding of what the rating agencies look for and what they're thinking. I think, though, from my perspective, they're still going to be looking as to whether you're actually issuing under that particular proposition or not. So whether you issue under that proposition or another proposition, you're still incurring debt. So that even if you have voted or not, once you go to incur additional debt, they're going to be taking a case-by-case. I think if you tell them we don't intend on issuing immediately, they'll take that into account as well. That's just mine, but I would defer obviously to
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's the common sense of it.
Exactly.
But that's not...
Rating agencies, absolutely.
Not written.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely answer any question. I'll be here for the rest of the meeting if any questions come up. Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time and travel and efforts to get here and presentation. We'll jump back to item number 3, consider and discuss engineer's report for the proposed November 2017 bond election.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Correa with Garver, for the record. What you've got in front of you is a presentation that we prepared with Charles' assistants and your staff to go over the current situation with the bond program and the water supply. So on this agenda, on second one, there we go. Real quick again, just a recap of the bond program itself, your water supply needs, your options, and then the Title 16 funding opportunity. So just an overview, why are we doing this? Why the bond program? Your staff has developed a 5-year CIP going out to 2022. Right there. And you've refined and prioritized all those projects and created a list of unfunded projects, in addition to previous reports outlining the justification and needs for these projects. And we've developed what the proposed bond program proposition would look like. Garver is currently helping you write that report, which is due in August of this year for the November election. So that's just a quick recap of why we're doing it. The next purpose of this presentation on the next slide is to address water supply. As you can see, this is a graph that outlines what the projected demands would be in acre-feet going out to 2040. The next slide shows what a potential gap would look like. So that big rectangle in the blue...
Backing up a bit, the previous slide, that's
yes, sir?
projected demands out to 2040, and that's just based on the curve of current consumption, or projecting that we're going to have X amount of more users at that time?
Well, it was done on from our 2012 modeling study that CDS had done. So it's based on year 2011 data. So year 2011 was pretty much our drought record, and so it was that consumption rate during a dry year, and then the growth rate based on population projections, which is more or less 1.7%. But that's what this growth projection is at.
It's just bouncing balls in the air, or trying to count how many you think will be there later.
Right, well, there's another table that kind of shows...
I'm sorry, I just missed it.
Yeah, this is sort of our starting point, where we identified, you know, we needed to pursue the alternate water source. And of course, seawater desal was already proposition, but we were looking for, you know, a lower cost method in the direct level use structure.
So, by the chart we're looking at, sorry for interrupting, but by 2014, we were off the chart,
Well,
theoretically.
Yes, sir, and the next slide will go into more detail about that.
I'll shut up.
It's not a problem, so...
Where do you need municipal conditions?
Yes, sir. So essentially, that blue rectangle, I'll show this on the next slide, that is like your worst-case scenario. That represents 5,628 acre-feet as your worst allocation, because it's prorated, obviously, and it's dependent on drought. And so the rest of it, obviously, is just the balance between the supply and the demand. But the next slide does offer probably a better breakdown. So from 2012 to 2016, you have your actual use in acre-feet, and then your actual allocation. And so you can see that the allocation, obviously, is greater than your actual use, so it's been good. But in 2011, it was a 5628, correct, Charles? That was your...
Like, we're actually, we can get prorated, so under normal conditions, we're at 73, 78, but as the reservoir volume between top and Nami starts dropping below 50%, they start taking away some of our authorized roads, and that can be cut down to a maximum of 551 plus the water rights we just bought.
Is that you don't use it, you lose it scenario, or when this is allocated?
No,
That's just what they sit back and decide everybody gets.
Based on our history.
Yeah, the
Well,
law.
that's right, but if we don't use it, or we don't have the consumption, they're not going to allocate it to us.
Well, yeah, right. So like the water law was written in 1967, and we were one of 4 districts that get prorated like these, even though we're municipal. We're not treated like irrigation exactly, and we're not treated like a municipal where you never lose it. We actually lose a portion of our water rights under drought conditions. Because that's just the way they set the law back in 1967. And so under normal conditions, we basically can meet our demand through 2035 without having to buy water rights. But when we're fully prorated, which happened, we got fully prorated at the last drought event, then we actually get cut to water below our current use as far as an allocation. And there's a graph that on the following page, if you want to scroll down to it, that sort of gives a little better graphic of what happens over time here. And so, I started tracking in 2012, when we ran into these issues on water, and that green line at the top is the actual allocation, because we were already prorated back in 2012. We were fully prorated the entire year from 2013, and then the rain came, and so we started getting that allocation right back up with rain. And then that blue line below it is what we actually used. So, in 2012, we stayed, we actually used slightly more than what we would have had fully prorated. But with the water conservation that we implemented, possibly the new pump station project, the new pipeline, and then the rain came, so our water usage through that conservation stage did drop. But now that we're back in dry years from 2016, it picked right back up. And even that first red dot is the projected use of the current year. So, when you look at dry years, we're running pretty close to that line, on the red line on the projection for growth and whatnot. And so, basically, there's a new item that we've never discussed before in terms of a cost, and that's just buying surface water rights, and only buying water rights, not worrying about anything else. And in that Proposition 1, which we already went through and kind of going out of order, we put a cost with the water rights allocation that would be current, that would be equal to our reclaimed water source today. And so that line item is in Proposition 1 at 1.7 million more or less, and that's getting us about 675 acre-feet of water. And so if we find a way to budget that purchase, then that picks us up to this blue line in terms of drought conditions.
Wait a minute, you're moving a little bit fast for me here. All right, you're saying that you're talking about Proposition 1, and you're proposing that, we have that in there to buy the water rights.
Yeah.
And that brings us back up into an area.
Yeah, it gets us to, at 2025 or somewhere between, before 2025, even for buy the water rights, we're still going to be short under drought conditions.
There's another couple of options that our esteemed colleague, Mr. Thomas, had brought up something, working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife for their 1,000 acre-feet of water rights. If we build them some ponds or some lakes, I really think that needs to be pursued, personally. That's 1,000 acre-feet of water rights that we could potentially use from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, working with them. And from what Mr. Gallant said, when he did contact them, the gentleman he talked to says, you know, they're agreeable to it, let me work on it. And then there's another option that hasn't been considered also, is we have an attorney who is a Texas representative in the Texas legislature. Why can't he go there and introduce some legislation to get us off this proration if we're one of only 4 cities? Has that been explored?
Yeah, now we haven't looked at this from a legal standpoint as far as.
I mean that, you know, I don't know why we should be reducing our, you know, why we should be reduced if we're a municipal water district. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, that needs to be a different conversation that we need to have.
But it is a good conversation.
Absolutely, and do we want to go ahead and engage a lobbyist along with that to pursue it?
And is it a conflict of interest?
Yeah, that's what came to my mind. I mean, he's there.
Politics? There's no conflict of interest.
Well, I mean, I guess there's sort of different tangents we can take on this, but just to kind of finish walking through the table, that orange line is what the things that advanced water treatment can do in terms of, you know, diversions off the river. And that blue line, that horizontal, is for the dollars that we put in the money request. That's our worst case under the documentation. So that's basically kind of how the table is set up.
Sure. Yeah, in short, I think the message is that you do need to diversify your water portfolio or go the legal route. I think that would work too, but the bottom line is buying water rights would help. That would get you so far. And then going back to the reuse, I'll explain a little while pursuing that would be a good option at this point, and there are reasons for that. But obviously, yeah, there are a lot of ways we can skin this cat. The bottom line is we should just start, in order to be good water planners, we should start addressing those future needs now, is the main point.
If I may make a comment, I think buying water rights with bond money is like buying a used car at a high interest automobile lot. I mean, it'll get you there, but it's an expensive fix.
Yeah, but we're still guessing what it's going to be in the future. We're just
You know there's going to be
bit.
growth. You know growth is coming, and you know that building is going to happen, and you are going to have to plan. And drought is, as we've seen, is a reality. I mean, the water is either on or it's off. I mean, the drought's coming or not coming. And we go through these peaks and valleys of water use and water availability. That's all. I mean,
But I've heard that, and I've heard the complications of the reuse program, and I'm anxious to hear what you say of what the options are associated with the reuse program.
Yes, sir.
To do that, so I'm open.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the bottom line is trying to pursue some sort of drought-proof supply, obviously, in an effort to diversify your portfolio. So if any more questions on these two charts? Are we good at that? That's just an illustration showing that in drought conditions, we could potentially be in trouble. So, 2 options the district has looked into, one with a pilot and then one with a full-blown feasibility study, water reuse and desal. This really isn't news to anybody, but just to further illustrate what the cost difference between the two is for a drought-proof supply, which I think should be a target. Considerable difference. And so the next slide shows how we keep going with a drought-proof supply. You've already paid for a feasibility report identifying direct potable reuse as the most feasible drought-proof supply. You've already had some tailored improvements underway with the improvements at the Port Isabel wastewater treatment plant, and you've got cost projections that are complete to this point for the advanced water treatment system. The next slide is just to kind of drive home why this would be a good time for pursuing this DPR project. The bond election is an opportunity for funding, in addition to a Title 16 funding opportunity. We've got the chance to secure 25% assistance and free money through this Bureau of Reclamation Title 16 funding opportunity. You've already got an eligible project, an eligible feasibility report, and this opportunity will not present itself again. Again, you've got a lot of effort to date. You spent a lot of money to get to this point. The schedules for your bond election report and for the application for this funding opportunity align in August of 2017. We're already working on one of them. And it's a good chance to get the public's input. Leaving the reuse project on as a bond proposition obviously would be a good indicator of public support, or lack thereof.
So this Title 16 opportunity expires this year?
The application, yes, sir, is
Okay.
due, I think on the next slide I've got the actual date on it. Scroll down to the next one. Just a little more information on Title 16.
August 17th?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just announced it, July 5th.
Yeah, they gave us a month. But it's up to 25% of free money for total project costs, and that's planning, design, and/or construction, before September 30th of 2019. You've already got a feasibility study that's complete and has been accepted. You are eligible for this project, or I'm sorry, for the funding with the DPR project.
So, I mean, based on the opinion of a probable cost of 8.3 million, 25% is gonna be about 1.8 million dollars of grant.
Well, for 2 years of work, it's not gonna fund construction, so construction wouldn't be included on this application that's due August 17th.
What would be included on this?
It would be, the lab work that we need, 12 months of data for TCT permitting, so effluent characterization, the pilot study, and so on. And so that portion of work would be included on an application that's due August 17th to pursue the grant.
So once again, we need a pilot study.
Yeah, that would be required.
And we have to match 75%.
Correct. And so, I already kind of...
All right, is okay, included in this $8.3 million, are you including the lab reports, are you including the pilot study? Is that
Yes, sir.
included in there?
Yes, and as far as, for the application that's due August 17th, the total project amount for that 2 years of work is actually 2.6 million. But that's on the high side. It'll be below 2.6 million. So we're looking at a potential grant opportunity of around 650,000, and then of course that 1.9 being the local contribution for this deadline of August 17th. That's on the high side.
We've heard that before.
Yes. No, but in this case, I mean, we can cut the cost of the pilot down and so on and so forth.
I've got a revised breakdown here. I don't know if y'all have this one or some format of it, but this does show the pilot study and effluent characterization in it. So even with design in here that we have right at $1 million, it's 8.413. So
Is Title IX, they come up every year?
No, actually, in December, they amended legislation for this Water Improvement by the Nation Act. It's that project update we gave back in April, where there was, our project was one of the ones sent to Congress, and the funding opportunity announcement just came out July 17th. And so this is the window for us to actually apply, which, so we have to have a board resolution, accepting the application at the August meeting, and then submit by August 17th.
So we might not see another opening for this for several years? Or who knows when?
who knows when?
This is the first time they've had Title 16 funding before.
It's really not a lot of money for the strings attached to it, and the pilot study and the expenses and all that. I mean,
Well,
the big picture.
TCEQ is going to require a pilot study no matter what.
I mean,
And I'm giving on the high side. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we could knock a good portion. I don't see the cost going up, it can go down.
Charles or Richard, what percentage of our current rehab or upgrade at this Port Isabel wastewater treatment plant, what percentage of it is how am I trying to phrase this? What percentage of it is for a reuse? You know what I'm saying? Is utilized?
About $6 million of that cost was preparing for this project.
6 million out of the 10. So we've already spent 6 million out of 10 just for reuse.
Dummies.
Yeah, dummies. You're right. Maybe.
We're also getting a plant that needs to be rehabbed anyway. So that's the
Right.
other side of it.
Have y'all contacted, no, SpaceX for renting out the launch pad?
let's keep going.
So that pretty much wraps up, in summary of what we're recommending be done. As your bond counsel stated earlier, the last bond election had desal and everything lumped in together. You've got a list of other projects that need to be addressed. The idea right now is to take advantage of this funding opportunity and the bond election opportunity and have a water reuse project as a standalone proposition, and then the rest of the clean water projects on their own ballot as a separate proposition. Just in case there's any resistance, we don't lose the other projects. In addition to that, Charles, you made a good comment about the cost potentially of the reuse, or the estimate for the reuse coming down.
Right.
In the regular meeting, and as y'all might recall, on our first work order, we had some effort in there to go through the previous engineer's report, fine-tooth comb it, and determine if there's any cost-saving opportunities. So, again, as Charles said, this number could come down. For example, if NF is determined to be a viable membrane option instead of RO, we could see that cost come down quite a bit.
Didn't we pull that out of the original agreement?
Yes, sir. Yep. So, again, in order to meet the August deadline for the application funding, we would need to go through that effort and determine what the final projected costs for this would be, to include it in the application and in the bond proposed proposition.
Yeah, I mean, without that authorization, I basically prepare the application on my own, no consulting assistance. It's just,
Yes, sir.
you know, there's different ways to see that.
Yes, sir.
And as far as the project list, there was a table that was part of this that I ended up putting onto those propositions, breaking out between proposition 1 and 2. I don't know if we want to jump that back up and maybe go on each project and the cost item, and maybe we can throw a yes or no to it, or...
You have 8, I was gonna bring that up to the chairman now,
Okay.
on this page here.
I'm not real comfortable with a full yes or no, which is 3 of us here, but we can discuss it. Sure. I'm speaking for myself.
No, I agree. The board has, the board moves in one direction,
Yes, sir.
The 18 million would more or less jump our tax rate to 8, 9 cents, something like that?
Yeah, well, 10 would be both. Adrian already ran the numbers, I just didn't have time to get in the packet. But if we do 18.4, that raises the tax rate to 8.9 cents.
Yeah, but it's not 18.4, I mean, it's 18.4 in construction costs, but then you have to add on attorney's fees, you gotta add on, closing costs, hosting and Estrada's fees, you gotta add on,
It's 21.
backup money, you gotta throw another $1 or $2 million in reserve.
It's 21.
Yeah.
The number I had.
Well, I mean, that's where I think we get to the point of, because right now, this is essentially the wish list, and
Correct.
start setting projects to get to a number that's comfortable. I mean, right now, this is like the holy grail of lift station rehab, getting everything done that needs to be done.
Don't want us to...
And then also, these numbers have 50% contingency in their cost, so that can, like, I mean, there's ways to kind of get it to work within a reasonable amount.
Well, based on what I've heard over the past year or so, two sludge holding item number 1 there, 2 sludge holding tanks, $2.2 million. That's if we decide to go with the reuse, we'll need 2. We can get by with 1, correct?
Well, the sludge holding things are needed because of the current construction with going to fine air diffusers.
Yeah, but the last time I heard it was we just needed 1.
Well, we need 1 for the current flows.
Right.
And then we would need 2 for, future increase, like...
You need 1 for TCQ compliance,
Right.
minimum. 2 for operational flexibility.
But 1 was gonna be adequate in handling all the demands, for now and the
For your solids loading currently, correct?
yeah,
Yes, sir.
and projected, next 10 years.
Yes, sir.
So,
Right, and this, I mean, when it comes time to actually putting out the project for bid versus an authorization, it just depends on how much you want to request to bid, versus, because, I mean, this thing can be issued in multiple phases or over time, it doesn't all go out in one month request. We have to, one thing I talked to Adrian about, our financial advisor, was preparing a drop schedule, see if it makes sense to break it down into different issues or how the timing would work. So that's another aspect to think about.
Well, the question is, are we gonna be putting more money in, staying with the sludge holding tank, we're gonna double that, or spend another 1.1, however much contingency fee you have written into that, and we're spending 1.6 on the additional water rights, and we've had quite a lot of conversation right here on water rights. What can they do, and what can we do with, you know, I'd really like to understand, and I've heard a little bit of both sides, of the practicality and the benefits of the reuse. I've heard that it's a good idea, not really done anywhere else, very few places.
Yes, sir.
And the challenge is here with our 4 plants and our connecting of those. If we were one big plant or we had, you know, connectability, it would be a different animal. But in my simple one-horse mind, I'd like to know the real benefits of the reuse and the cost benefit and the volume associated with that. I've only seen a minimal amount of volume potential reclaim for reuse that isn't near offset by cheap river water.
Yes, sir.
Today.
Right.
And then I myself have to feel comfortable. I like the idea of getting out ahead and getting with it, but at the same time, are we trying to devise or create something that's not needed for a considerable amount of time? Nobody knows when we will need it.
Right.
The worst case scenario when we don't have the water.
Yes, sir.
And in that time span from now till then, 10 years, 20 years, what else is going to come up that's a heck of a lot better, that will be a better opportunity that we don't even know right now?
Right.
That could be better done now. Are we trying to take a bite of something that we don't need to chew or try to swallow?
Yes, sir.
I'm putting it in my layman terms.
Yes, sir.
And so that's where I'm trying to wrap my head around is, one, you're saying reuse, and you show me the feet that's been used by the district and projected out, and that's somebody's opinion, and everybody's got one.
Right.
I know there's some science behind it, but none of us have the crystal ball.
Yes, sir.
To know what it is. So
Yes, sir.
if we're getting into this cost and, you know, just like the desal, if the world turned upside down, desal, however expensive now is, will be a cheap option then.
Correct.
So I'm not having a real good, comfortable feeling about taking on this monster project without being shown how it has the economical benefit to work with the district. I hope I'm making myself clear.
Absolutely. And I didn't bring that report was performed by another group, but I think they've already done that in comparing desal, seawater desal, and then the various forms of reuse. And so the project that's presented before you has already been identified as the most cost-effective, drought-proof supply.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, when we did our rate study, this project was incorporated into the projected increase. And so the rate increase we've already put in place will cover the operation and maintenance that would come into play once the additional facilities are put in.
But we had, if I understand correct, and I don't want to belabor more time on this, but my understanding is that you create a reuse water that's not potable. You got to mix it in with your river water and blend it to where you can actually use it. So at what point does that 500,000 or 5 million gallons or whatever it is it really practical? I like 25% free money. I sure don't feel comfortable spending 75% and marrying us to the federal regulations associated with it without feeling better about that we're going the right direction. So I don't want to be clouded by 25% free money. Whoa, that's like me going to Sam's and buying 10 cases of toilet paper when I need a roll.
Yes, sir.
It comes with strings. Federal money comes with strings.
Yeah. And that's what our audit people were telling us.
Yes. Comes with strings. I mean, that's no doubt.
Oversight.
Plus the expense of labor and reporting and other things you have to factor in that, you know, you're
Yeah, I'm also about my part. I think we need to do more workshops. We need to do some more roundtable discussion. Get all 5 alphas in the same place and let's talk about it and come up with a consensus of yes, go forward with the bond and go forward with these projects or not. And we may lose our Title 16 or whatever it is, but
If I may say, I'm not trying to push or anything, I'm just kind of trying to clarify all this. First of all, decisions like this take the entire board. For something like this to happen takes a ball to roll, and it's 2 years down the road before the bond is passed, monies are issued, projects are lined up. This is long-term planning. It doesn't just start today. In other words, whether we move forward or don't move forward, the ball takes 2 years down the road, before the project can be started, the engineer reports, the finances. There's a long protocol that goes along with these projects that doesn't just start immediately. I just kind of want to clarify that. It is long-range planning. It is for the future, and unfortunately, the future is what's unknown. I mean, you don't know whether what size road to build, a big road, a small road. Is there a lot of commerce and traffic and new homes coming, or are we going to lolly around at 2% growth every year? I mean, the river is a challenge in depending for the future and reliability and availability.
Yes, sir.
That's just I'm kind of trying to sum this up.
Yes, sir.
And that's the reality of it.
I'll make myself available for whatever we need to, of time to, kick this around. I don't even see that we've really got an agreed to schedule of projects that we want to go out to bond for.
Well, right, and that's where, of course, the first time costs are known for each line item on the project, and we've added the additional water rights for the first time. So, I don't know if we want to accomplish one and just go through each one real quick, just to get an opinion on each line item, just so we know what levels.
I don't know that we have time to do that. We had enough, number one, we've already had quite a bit of conversation about, one tank or 2 tanks, and why and what. And so...
And we don't have a full board.
I'm not comfortable. I want to hear more, and I'd like to do this some more. I'm not comfortable giving my thoughts or say and move along with this or not move along with some of these items without full representation. Again, I'll make myself available to do this.
Likewise.
And so this every 2 weeks or every twice a month thing, let's speed it up. We're out of time already. We got 3 weeks to put this puppy together if we're going to do it. So
The deadline is 21st.
yeah.
Yes, sir. And I think just one general idea to convey is that y'all mentioned getting the ball rolling, and I think when y'all kicked this off, the ball started rolling in 2014, or when did y'all go out for RFQs for it?
As far
Yeah.
as the bond election, I would say it started in May.
Yeah.
As far as trying to, or in March, we started looking at the first round of schedule.
Right. And I think we're out of time, maybe perhaps for a full-blown workshop, but y'all have done quite a bit of work to date on the water reclamation itself.
And I was a bobblehead sitting here taking it all in and saying, yeah, let's go ahead and look at it and everything, but I'll
Yes, sir.
admit I've not got a clear picture of what the hell we're trying to do here.
Yes, sir. Understood. Okay.
Our next regular meeting is the 9th or the 23rd, so really technically, we have one more meeting, which is August 9th, regular posted scheduled meeting on the 9th. The
Yes, sir.
deadline on this is for the 21st.
What the staff has, what we're talking about, we need 72 hours to post
Right.
something, and that's what I'm proposing, that we
Do you want to have a special workshop to go into these line items in more detail, or?
It's hard to get that answer right now without two people present, but I think, and if we need to kick it around, but if we're gonna do some stuff and do a full-blown presentation and answer and whatnot, we need to, it's like the 5th or the 12th, Saturday the 5th or Saturday the 12th, or, that's my opinion, Jeff. Is that
you need to do a Saturday rather than a weekday.
a weekday? Weekdays are kind of personally hard for me in the morning, but
The
I can do a
afternoon.
Saturday morning.
Or afternoon.
Or afternoon, you know,
Yeah.
3 o'clock on.
Give us 2 hours, you know, just devoted to this.
That's fine.
And
Kick around and see.
I'd like to do that. And
Afternoon or Saturday, you know, I don't really like Saturday mornings, to be honest with you. But,
No.
I mean, after 3, like Mr. Freeman said.
Depends on
would
the
be-
other,
would
after
be good.
3 is pretty much I'm
Right.
available or free.
Then, Chairman, would you look at a 3 to 5, a 3 to 5 date that would work for the board and staff
Okay.
ASAP?
I will start working on that, first thing in the morning, try and hone in, of course, you know, it takes engineer Richard.
Yeah, we're putting you at a real disadvantage if,
Coordinate to get together.
It's not a problem. So in the regular meeting, we'll have an agenda item, obviously, again, to go through the NF applicability and a value engineering effort. So that would go a long way, again, I think, to be able to provide you answers to some of your questions as well.
Okay.
So just something to
Sure.
think about.
yeah, we gotta start another meeting in 5 minutes.
Yes, I think we'll probably, we're concluding this at 5:30 for the regular meeting. Okay. Conclude the workshop at 5:25 PM. We'll resume at 5:30 for the regularly scheduled meeting.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
participating and listening. Thank you.